I want to introduce Dave. Dave's the founder and CEO of MASSolutions, the world's only no bullshit marketing firm. We are located in Pittsburgh, right in Gateway Towers next to the Wyndham. We also have offices in LA, in Long Beach. Dave's held senior leadership positions at UPMC and Duquesne University. He's the author of Get Where You Want to Go. And then he also has a podcast, which is the No BS Marketing Show. He is an avid blogger, and he's been featured in 100+ media outlets. So I think that he's the perfect person to be talking to you about storytelling for your business. Thank you.
Maria and Marcel are part of our No BS marketing team and the whole platform, and they do a great job, so I appreciate them being here, and thanks for having me. Think about that teacher, coach, or a college professor that made an impact on you that still lasts with you today. Now think about them in your mind's eye. What do you see and hear when you think of that elementary school teacher, maybe a high school coach, college professor, or some other leader that's impacted you? Now, remember what that was. Next, think in your mind's eye about your best boss. That boss that you worked for, that you felt you could be you, and who coached you and got the best out of you. What do you remember about that boss and their leadership skills? Think about that in your mind's eye. The people that have impacted us the most throughout our lives did it through storytelling. If you think about what you thought of with that teacher, professor, with that best boss, there's probably a mantra that they had, a story that they told, a phrase that they used. Storytelling impacts us, and it's the one thing that crosses cultures. It crosses countries. All of us, everyone in the world has learned through storytelling. It's passed on from generation to generation to generation. It's how we learn, it's how we build relationships, it's how we grow personally and professionally. But yet, in business, many leaders miss so many opportunities to leverage the power of storytelling. They don't even realize every instance and encounter that they have is really an opportunity to tell stories. And it's an opportunity to be just like that teacher that's impacted you all these years later, or that coach, or that college professor. And they can be just like that best boss. And so can you. And so what we're going to do today is walk through the power of storytelling and why leaders need to focus on storytelling. Then we're going to shift into how each of you can do storytelling more than you are today and better than you are today. Sound like a plan? If at any point it seems like it's not a good plan, you get to hit it. Oh, wait.
Oh no.
Oh no.
That's
So you get the bullshit right in front of you.
I like it. All right.
If I start going down a tangent or something,
All right.
you got to let me know. You also know on the red carpet they always say a certain phrase when the interviews come up. Well, I'm here today because of Cindy Shoemaker, and I'm wearing Cindy Shoemaker from top to bottom. So why do leaders need to tell stories? The first reason is that stories build trust. "58% of employees would rather trust a stranger than their boss." 58% of employees would rather trust a stranger than their boss. That's from a Harvard Business School research report. Storytelling helps to build trust. If we have all these people that don't trust the boss and they're not relating to them, it's partially because that leader isn't using storytelling. Stories make us relatable. And once we're relatable, we can begin to build relationships. And once we're building a relationship with someone and we relate to someone, we begin to trust them. So the first reason why you need to be doing more storytelling is that stories build trust. The second reason is stories align the team. Stories align the team. Another statistic, 83% of employees believe that their productivity suffers because of the lack of communication up, down, and across the organization. That's from the benchmark report on human behavior. So 83% of employees feel that they're not being communicated to in a fashion that can make them productive. The average loss is $5,400 per employee. So if you have 100 employees, just do that math, and that's attributable to the lack of adequate communication in the organization. Your employees need to understand the why. They need to know why they're doing what they do. They need to understand what your vision is. They need to know where you're taking them. And the way to do that is through storytelling. Every opportunity that you have to convey what you're doing and why you're doing it for your company in a story, not just the company marketing phrase and not just a hackneyed cliche, but the real why of what that employee is doing and what that team member is doing, is the stories align the team. So that's the second reason. The third reason is that stories differentiate you from the rest. Stories differentiate you from the rest. Now here's an important thing about the story. Your story is yours. Who else can tell it? And no one can tell that story even close to as good as you can. So when you're able to tell your story and your company's story, it differentiates you. It's your way of explaining why someone should do what you're asking as an employee. It's your way of explaining why someone should buy from you. So the three reasons that you need to have stories telling be a big part of your activities every day. Stories build trust, stories align the team, and stories differentiate you. So I want to go back and ask a couple of you, tell me a little bit about when I asked you to think of that elementary school teacher, that college professor, that leader from your youth. Somebody want to give me an example of who they remember and what they remember the most?
Our course instructor, we always just had a lot of fun with him, and I don't know, he was awesome.
So he made things fun by, give me some examples now.
We went on a lot of trips. We did a lot of concerts around Pittsburgh. He would crack jokes, and when you'd get nervous to get on stage, he would just come and tell you a story and calm you down.
So it makes an impact on you for your life. Think of the impact each of you can make when you begin to incorporate storytelling more into your mix, into your toolkit. Thank you. Now, how about on the best boss? Who here can tell me what they remember about their best boss when I asked you that question? Anyone? Yes?
So I've been working with my boss for 26 years and taught the business. And we had a coworker one day, and he had to go meet a borrower, and it was about a 45-minute drive. And my boss said, you don't have to dig a ditch. You just have to get in the car and just drive out to their home and get the paperwork signed. So sometimes now, even though we don't have to do that, because a lot of things are done online, I think of that in my brain, like, okay, Laura, you don't have to dig a ditch, just go and get in your car. And it's just stayed with me for 26 years.
Isn't that amazing? The power of storytelling. So now you know the 3 reasons why you need to tell stories. You have heard 2 great examples of how stories impacted you. So now we're going to talk about some ways you can do it more effectively than you are now, and ways that you can recognize that storytelling opportunities come in the form of a text, they come in emails, they come in the break room when you run into somebody, they come through presentations like this, they come with discussions with your boss or your team. Storytelling isn't just this formal example of me in front of you today. Storytelling opportunities are near you all the time. And if you notice the people that are able to sell the most, they're able to apply storytelling throughout their day in a natural fashion. They're going to use all 4 of these ways to make a great story. So the first way to make a great story, and again, none of these are going to be earth-shattering to you, but then we're going to tell you a little bit of examples of how it was done and then how you might do it. The first is you have to make it memorable. Make it memorable. When you're trying to make it memorable, there's a couple things to think about. Clarity and brevity. How many of you know that leader? I hope it's none of you, but how many of you know that leader that loves to hear themselves talk? That leader doesn't understand. That leader doesn't understand how to make it memorable. How about that leader that feels compelled to explain it so great detail, thinking that the more they tell us, the more we're going to retain? That's a struggle. What I'm going to try to do today is make 7 to 10 points, and that's still a ton of points in 45 minutes. But think of when that person goes on and on and on again. You have to make it memorable. I'll mention Ernest Hemingway throughout this presentation because his ideas and the way that he wrote are inspirational to anyone that does content, anyone that tells stories. And his iceberg theory was what you leave out is more important than what you put in. And that's why I love editing, because it's just always come naturally to me. I love editing. I tell my team, and Marcel and Maria will both tell you, that they'll give me something. As soon as they give me it, I'll say, you sure you don't want to take 20% out? And they kind of go, and I say, well, I'll do it for you then. And so we edit it and we make it less, because less is more. So make it memorable, clarity and brevity. One of my favorite examples of that is, got milk? 2 words and an exclamation point. The California milk processors, way back in 1993, wanted to try to increase brand awareness and increase sales of milk. So they came up with a campaign. And the first commercial from that campaign was a 30-second spot on TV. It was called TV back then. And it showed this hapless historian who was making a peanut butter sandwich. And he makes the peanut butter sandwich, and you see in his house that he has this duel set up that involves Alexander Hamilton, and he's made his peanut butter sandwich. He takes a bite, and a phone call comes in from a radio station, and it says, who shot Alexander Hamilton? And he goes, Alba! And the disc jockey says, you can win $10,000. I'm going to ask you again, who shot Aaron Burr? And he goes, who shot Alexander Hamilton? He goes, Aaron Burr, but he can't understand it. He grabs the carton of milk from his refrigerator, and it's empty, and he pulls it up, and he says it a third time, Aaron Burr! And the DJ hangs up on him because he couldn't understand that he was saying Aaron Burr, and the commercial ends with, got milk, and an exclamation point. So then, got milk with a question mark. So then, those 2 words and a question mark, plus that visual of a milk mustache, are remembered by just about everybody in this room. And it was rated one of the top 10 commercials of all time by USA Today. Clarity and brevity make it memorable. So how can you do that? You have to think in terms of how can you simplify your message to be around one big idea and have less words than you thought. So I want any of you to think about right now to tell me if I could have someone give an example. This would be a tough example, so you can get a book, a signed book. Think of either a message about you or about your company, and we'll go through it and we'll talk about it. But first I'm going to have everybody do it, but then we'll have one person tell us what theirs is. So we're going to use the Ernest Hemingway 6-word tactic or tool. And in 6 words you can tell a heck of a story. One example that was attributed to Ernest Hemingway, but it's actually urban legend and not true, but it said that his 6-word story to win a bet was he was at lunch and there was a bunch of people and they said, for $10 make the shortest story, and he supposedly said, for sale, baby clothes, never worn. And if you think about it, that's 6 words, and you're all thinking something right now. I wonder what happened. For sale, baby clothes, never worn. It's urban legend, he didn't actually say that, but he did use the 6-word story. So what I want each of you to do is pull out your phone and your notes app, or if there are people that use these things called pen and paper, there might be a couple of those. Take and create your 6 words, either about you or your company, your 6-word story. Now, here's the thing about it. The more you obsess over it, the worse it'll get. So I'm going to give you 1 minute. Once she gets her phone on and her tab, I don't want her to be.
My phone is. What am I gonna do?
I don't want her to be behind. I don't want her to be behind. So you're all getting an extra 15 seconds. You can start if you want, but we're going to give you 1 minute to do your 6-word story and see if you can make it memorable.
Be 8? Can it be 8?
She asked if it can be 8.
That is not.
Go. Will you go? Or give yours? Okay, cool. 15 seconds. If you're not done, don't worry, because we're going to keep building upon your 6-word message and your 6-word story throughout the day. We have a volunteer who has agreed to give hers, and again, there will be 4 different times where we're going to ask 4 different people, and you all have a chance to get a book or a button or a t-shirt, your choice. So could you read yours?
Mortgage puzzle solved.
3 words. Now,
Go for it, Chief.
round of applause. There you go. See? She can leave now. She can drop the mic. All right, that's fantastic. Think about that. Clarity, brevity. Her target audience would understand it, right? So throughout the day here, throughout the morning, we're going to come back after each one of these. There's 4 of these we're going to do, and we give you a chance after each one to tweak your 6 words. And by the end of the morning, we'll have at least 4 people give theirs, but anybody else that wants to will give theirs as well. Good. So the second one is make an emotional impact. There are 8 emotions: fear, sadness, distrust, happiness, anticipation. One of those 8 types of emotion has to be stirred with your message. You have to make an emotional impact. When I was brought to the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, we were trying to build a healthcare system that started out with some hospitals in Oakland, and then we went out and said, let's get some hospitals in the surrounding area. But we ultimately wanted to have a healthcare system that would be world-renowned, that would include health insurance, physicians, the technology, diagnostic technology, physical therapy, hospitals. And we were trying to build this system and build a brand. But we were fighting something that was huge in this marketplace, and it's what I call a franchise in the mind of the consumer. And a franchise in the mind of the consumer is something that is so well known that people actually use the name to describe something. And a long time ago, one of the examples of that in the 70s, 80s, into the 90s was that people would often call a tissue Kleenex, because Kleenex had a franchise in the mind of the consumer. Well, when we were trying to build this health system and include a health plan, we would go out and do market research, which I'll talk a lot about today. And our market research we would ask people to what they thought about their health care, and they would say things like this. Well, I get my Blue Cross and Blue Shield from Health America. I get my Blue Cross and Blue Shield from Aetna. You want to talk about a franchise in the mind of the consumer. When there were union negotiations in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they would say, don't take away my Blue Cross Blue Shield. It wasn't their Blue Cross Blue Shield, it was their health insurance. So we were battling a franchise in the mind of the consumer. So we had to tug on one of those 8 emotions to explain what we were all about. And we said, choose your health care as if your life depended on it. Choose your health care as if your life depended on it. What emotion were we playing off of? What emotion? Fear. Fear. We wanted you to realize that if you didn't come for the best care, there were serious ramifications. We changed a marketplace, we changed a region, we really changed healthcare across the country, and people in Pittsburgh don't realize that. To have an integrated financial and healthcare delivery system, one of the first 5 in the world to do it. Choose your healthcare as if your life depended on it. Now, I will tell you, I love playing off of happiness. One of our clients years ago was twin pops. We could show twins eating popsicles in the summer. That's playing off of happiness, joy, anticipation. But what was the hand that we were dealt? Our market research showed that for us to make an emotional impact, we had to battle that franchise in the mind of the consumer. I get my Blue Cross and Blue Shield from Health America, who at the time was the second health insurance company. You don't hear much about them, but now the first health insurance company in the market is UPMC Health Plan, like it or not. And the storytelling is what did it. The market research, time and time again, would show around from 1995 to 2005, when people in this region rated the quality of care, they rated Allegheny General, that hospital, above Presbyterian, above Montefiore. But the perception was that UPMC was the brand. That all came from our storytelling. Choose your health care as if your life depended on it. I left UPMC to start my own company, and I remember before I had left, I had suggested maybe it's time, choose your health care goes on the shelf, and I thought I might get fired after saying that. Jeffrey Romoff was brilliant, most brilliant strategist I've ever been around and worked for, and he's truly an amazing brand builder and messaging person too, and he gave me a glare. But what did happen was about 4 years ago, when the battle got really intense between Highmark, Allegheny Health Network, and UPMC, my baby came back. Choose Your Healthcare was brought back. It wasn't my baby. It was Jeffrey Romoff's baby. His baby came back. So Jeffrey Romoff and UPMC brought that back to get us to think again about where we were in this marketplace. And Choose Your Healthcare came back for about a year. But now it's life-changing medicine. Really good. Life-changing medicine. So you had your 6-word exercise, And we talked about that, and then we talked about a franchise in the mind of the consumer with Blue Cross Blue Shield. And we're talking about storytelling, choose your healthcare as if your life depended on it. That rolled through the entire workforce. We had, at that time, 47,000 employees. It's up to about 60,000 now. And we had targeted storytelling campaigns to reach all of our employees. And we have a new client in LA that people were using our big idea advantage, our tagline, our slogan that we came up for that client. There were some employees making fun of it. And I said, that's when you know you've hit it, is when you've gone through all of the messaging internally that employees are actually saying, choose your security as if your life depended on it. The security department director was telling me that one day as he saw me walking through the garage. And then at Duquesne University, when Duquesne University had a big problem, I had to stand in front of the board with Dean Stalder, Jim Stalder, brilliant business dean, and we made a presentation that showed that such a huge amount of Duquesne University students were from Allegheny and the 5 contiguous counties. And people outside of Western Pennsylvania did not even know how to pronounce Duquesne. Duquesne! So we said we needed to make it memorable and make an emotional impact. And I said, why don't we play off of the one thing that's great about our name? It's this really active verb that we can use to our advantage. Duquesne, do more. And enabled us to say, do more to help others for the nursing school. Do more business for the business school. Do more to change the world for the natural sciences. But I'll never forget that the Vice President of Student Services was a priest, one of the Holy Spirit, Congregation of the Holy Spirit. And he said to me, Dave, I was out at a bar at the South Side this weekend. I went, interesting. Any Duquesne grads here? They knew who I'm talking about. They know exactly who I'm talking about. And he says, I'm at a bar on the South Side. And I go, okay. And he said, there's a bunch of Duquesne students and they hold up shots of tequila and they go, do more tequila. And he said, what do you think about that? And I said, I love it. I mean, if they're saying that at the bar at the South Side at 2 in the morning with you with them, they're living life large, and we're getting the message out because it was making an emotional impact and people felt compelled to talk about it. So how do you do that? Well, look at your 6 words right now. And we had the winner that gets to choose one of the 3 MASSolutions gifts. So when you have a second person that's going to try to match that, go back to your 6 words. See if there's anything you want to change so that you touch on making an emotional impact. Do more. Do more to help others. Choose your healthcare as if your life depended on it. These examples of impact. Let's take 30 seconds this time to see if you can think of changing a word or 2 that enhances yours to make an emotional impact.
I would
Yes.
just like to point out that neither of those are 6 words. Just saying.
Yeah, do more is 2. Do more is 2. I'm glad she brought that up because before you do your work, when we were using Choose Your Healthcare, it was against every marketing tactic that I'd ever done in my career. Every bone in my body was saying it's, 9, 10, 11 words? And they're big words. Healthcare. Dependent. They're like 3, 4 syllables there. So I want to tell you why that works. It still works because it is such a strong statement and makes such a strong emotional impact that you can get past it and it still resonates with you. So imagine that we had something like 87% retention of our slogan, tagline, big idea when it was that long. Choose your health care as if your life depended on, that's 15 syllables probably. But it worked because we were making a bold statement. We were saying to you, this is where you need to be for your health care. So thank you for bringing me that up because I actually always try to remember to bring that point up. It was a very difficult one, and as a storyteller, that's a long thing. Her point is well taken, and that's how we were able to make it work was because it made such an emotional impact. So 30 seconds to see if you can add an emotional impact to your 6 words. She's still bargaining to get 8.
It's not changing.
No, we might have to hit the BS button again. do it? Okay, we got someone, she gave me, here's, I'm gonna just give you a little hint. If you look at me and make eye contact when we're doing an exercise, I'm calling on you. All right? Go ahead.
I have two versions. Move forward, relieved and relaxed.
Okay.
Okay, then I added, which is more than 6 words, with movers who care.
Okay, well, first, no, it's very good. So go through the first part again.
Move forward, relieved and relaxed.
So think about that, relieve and relax, is that what you said? Okay, those are both emotional type words, right? So you're getting emotion in. Go on, go through the whole thing again.
Move forward, relieved and relaxed with movers who care. Movers who care is our tagline,
Okay.
so I just threw that in.
Okay. What do you guys think?
I like move forward. It's like motivating. Like I'm gonna move forward. You know.
Anybody else? Any other comments? Yes.
Move forward with movers who care is enough.
Move forward, movers who carry that, move in there twice. Let's see, making progress. Good. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Good, thank you. You also get to choose one of the 3 gifts. I'm going to give her one just because she's been difficult. I'm a bit of a maverick. I'm a bit of a maverick myself, so I'm always have a soft spot for other rebels. The third one is make it about them. Now, here's a couple things for you to think about. There's a neglected target audience that today is probably the most important for every successful company, and it's our employees. And our employees, today it's so difficult to find employees that fit and then retain them. I'm not talking about finding a warm body, I'm talking about finding employees that fit and then retain them. So I talk a lot about B to E, because you've heard of B to B, business to business, B to C, business to consumer. B to E is business to employee, and you have to do business to employee marketing just like you do business to business marketing if that's your industry and your sell, or business to consumer if you're going direct to a consumer. And business to employee marketing is about the 3 R's, recruitment, retention, and results. Now remember, I mentioned a statistic that said 83% feel that there's not enough communication and it hurts productivity. And I told you the figure of $5,400 per employee per year is a loss, and I think that's probably low. I look at that study and think that seems low. B to E marketing means you focus on your employees as if they're a target audience, just like you focus on one of your target audiences of potential customers. And that way you're able to help with recruitment, retention, and results. So how do we do that with storytelling to make it about them? Well, talk to your employees. You should be doing qualitative research on an ongoing basis. And for employees, you as a leader can do that. Now, when you're doing it with customers, I strongly suggest you bring an outside firm in because they'll tell the outside firm more. But if you're doing your job as a leader and you're not one of that 58% that they rather trust a stranger than you, you can ask some open-ended questions to employees. I'm going to give you a couple of open-ended questions that you could be asking, and you have to do these in a subtle manner so you don't come across as creepy or like you're doing a research project. But say to someone, what was the first reason why you started working here? So what's the first reason why you started working at the company you're at today?
The longevity and stability of Dollar Bank.
Okay, so the reason she came was the longevity and stability of Dollar Bank. The second question is, what is the main reason you're still working there today?
I love to help clients.
Notice how those 2 answers were different. But it helps you. How does it help you? You know how to recruit. Some of the language to recruit someone is to talk about the stability of Dollar Bank. But also some language to recruit is to talk about how Dollar Bank helps you, because one is helping you to land someone who doesn't know yet what she's learning and how much she can help others through Dollar Bank. So you ask these 2 open-ended questions, and you be quiet and listen, And you begin to ask that of multiple employees, and you track it. Just even if it's just tracked in your head or on a piece of paper or in your notes app on your phone or in an actual formal spreadsheet. But you start tracking this. What's the first reason that you came to work here? Why do you still work here today? Then ask this one, and yes, I know you're going to get complaints, and the 20% of rude naysayers who don't like anything, you have to push off to the side, and that's part of being a leader, to be able to diagnose that. And this question is, what's the one thing you'd change about the company? Oh, I'd make more money. Haha, that's the first answer everybody says. We'll throw that off to the side. What's the one thing you'd change about the company? I'd get a parking spot right in front of the door. Okay, let's stop being funny. What's the one thing you'd change? No, if they keep going on that path, you throw them in the 20% bin, your regular bin, and you leave them over there and you say, we're going to move on because there's no changing it. But a lot of people will actually tell you, and they'll tell you something pretty valuable about your company. So if I would ask you that, what's the one thing you'd change about Dollar Bank?
Partner up the employees in a more progressive way.
More collaboration. Now, think about how powerful that is, what you just said. Why are people leaving companies today? It's a lot of times tied to communication and collaboration. So she just hit on something that is a big piece of recruitment and retention. Now, if her boss asks her that and asks her peers, all of a sudden you're gathering some information that can be used to help advocate for change. When I was at UPMC, I would tell my team, the only way we're going to change things here at UPMC or Duquesne is by if I can have some data or something to be able to present, even if it's qualitative. So that's a way to advocate for change, is if you're out asking your employees and you keep hearing, you ask 20 employees and one thing comes up 12 times, it doesn't matter that you don't have a statistically significant sample. It matters that you've heard it so much that you can now go to your boss, who can go to their boss, who can go all the way to whoever's making the final decision, and you can talk about changing it. So now you found out what's the one reason they came here, what's the main reason they stayed today, what's the one thing they changed. 3 simple questions that are open-ended, and if you listen and track those, you can then begin to tell stories around that. So if the first reason someone came, I could tell a story about that. If 5 people said what she said, I could be in front of a Dollar Bank group as a VP and say, you know, one of the things I've heard odd is people come here because it's stable and secure. That's why they take the job. And I get it. I get it. We all crave that. It's part of the human condition. But what excites me is that when you ask them why are they still here, it's because of the change that they can make for our customers. That's what inspires me as a vice president of Dollar Bank, to make sure all of our employees can feel that way, so that we are changing things for the better for our customers. That's how you tell a story. You're making it memorable, making an emotional impact, and making it about them. Any questions on that? B2E marketing, ask open-ended questions, listen, and build your case to advocate for change, but also build your story around what you hear. Now, if you're going to get a chance to talk to customers, you can kind of ask the same thing. We ask a lot of people, what's the first reason why you first started working with Company X? My cousin used to work there. You hear things like that. Well, what's the reason you started working there? Well, that Bonita Juliet at MASSolutions, she's just a fantastic client manager, and she gets our projects done, and she drives things home, and it's working out great. Well, we learned that they gave their cousin some business, but stayed with them for a different reason. So you're asking these same questions. What's the reason you first started working with Dollar Bank? What's the reason you're still working with Dollar Bank? What's the one thing you change about Dollar Bank? You will hear incredibly valuable information that enables you to make your story about them. Make it about them. What would the employees have felt if that vice president was saying that speech I gave in a meeting?
They would have felt very empowered.
And in today's world, that's what's needed, isn't it? So the third part of great storytelling is make it about them. Now, look back at your 6 words from Ernest Hemingway. Let me tell you another story, hopefully a memorable one. My first class in college. So I made my decision of where to go to college the right way, the way most teenagers should do it. I was a 16-year-old senior because my parents started me really early. I ended up graduating late in my senior year as a 17-year-old, and I made my decision of where to go to college based on basketball. Based on where I was going to play basketball. Yeah. Okay. So I go into my first class after a night of partying, have a baseball cap down, and all the jocks are in the back row, living up to the dumb jock stereotype. And this professor goes, he's going through roll call, and he goes, Dave Mastovich. And he goes, where's Dave Mastovich? And I raise my hand, I'm like all embarrassed. My first ever class, and the professor, I'm horrified. He goes, you and I have a special bond. And his name was Dr. Hunter, and he was a English literature professor and so forth. He strolls the whole way around the room. I'm in the back now, I'm sweating. And he goes, you and I share a birthday. And I said, wow. And then, in that very class, he went on to start talking about Hemingway. So how about how that ties to you and what I'm doing today? But how crazy is that? You come into a class, you're a young kid, you made this decision for a crazy reason, for basketball, you're trying to hide, and he calls attention to me, I'm horrified, and then he says, we share the same birthday. Now, he was great at telling stories. He told the Hemingway story to me. This is way back decades ago, so long ago I hate to admit. And I'm still remembering and telling you today because he made it about me, made it memorable, made it emotional impact, made it about me, which is number 4. You have to make it about you. You have to make it about you. So I should say he made it about them, which is me, but the 4th one is to make it about you. And what I mean by that, as I said earlier, it's your story. No one else can tell it as good as you. I love the cliche from another storyteller who said, no one can out-you you. And it's true. No one can out-you you. So you need to make sure that you focus on the positive stories that are there for the taking about you. And what I mean by that is, I jokingly refer to it as the Seinfeld storytelling approach. What you think is nothing, others think is something. The show's about nothing, right? But it wasn't about nothing. Seinfeld was about life. Seinfeld was about all of us. It's why it was such a popular show. The same thing with your story. You think your story is nothing because the things that come easy to all of us, we think are easy, so we don't think they're great. So like, Cindy can make this jacket, and that's fantastic. To me, that's amazing. Cindy doesn't sell herself as much as she probably could. She's fantastic at what she does. She can sell that stuff even more. She can talk more about it because what she's doing is unique. Each of you are doing something that you do well, so you take it for granted, and you think it's easy. And so it's a Seinfeld storytelling approach. You're not telling your story as well as you could. So what you need to think about is every encounter that I have, just do a quick prep, whether it's a text, an email, a phone call. You're walking into a meeting, it's a presentation, it's a board meeting, it's with your staff, it's with your team, it's in the break room. Give a quick 15-second thought to how can I apply these 4 things. So when you're applying all of them, yes, you're making it about them, but you're interjecting you. You're interjecting your way. Look, this whole thing is about you and storytelling, but I interjected my own ways of doing things and how I do storytelling in a memorable fashion. So it works for all of us. So how do you make it about you? Well, how many people have read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why? So we got 1, 2. All right, so Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K. If you're not a reader, just go watch his videos at Simon Sinek. And I would strongly suggest reading the book Start With Why. So I'm reading the book Start With Why probably 8-10 years ago. And it talks about you have to start with your why, your reason for being. Your reason for being. So your company's reason for being. And I thought, Wow, that's great. Every leader needs to define their reason for being. So I'll give you an example of one. Steve Ells from Chipotle was a chef, and he decided that sustainably raised foods should not be an elitist pursuit. That's his why. Sustainably raised foods should not be an elitist pursuit. They should be available to anyone. That's the why behind starting Chipotle. But when I read Simon Sinek's book and I thought of Chipotle, I realized it was only half of the way there. It was only one of the why questions. Because my teenage son Carter loves Chipotle. And he still has not yet said to me, "Dad, I want some sustainably raised food, and it should not be an elitist pursuit. Let's go to Chipotle." Carter says, "Dad, let's get me some Chipotle." And he goes and he loves the experience. He knows what he's going to get. He loves when he walks in. While we're standing in line, I can tell he's getting excited. And he's ready to get what he orders and everything. And he enjoys Chipotle. So Steve Ells had his why that Simon Sinek said we should start with why. Our why, our reason for being. So you start with your why, your reason for being. But the second why is your customer's why, their reason for buying. So you have to answer the two why questions. Your why, your reason for being. Your customer's why, their reason for buying. I told you about that marketing intel. You're going to ask those questions. Doesn't that tell you what their reason for buying is? When I say to you, why'd you start going to Chipotle? Why do you still go to Chipotle? What's the one thing you change about Chipotle? They're telling you your why, their why. So you need to know your why, your reason for being as a person and for your company. Then you need to know their why, your customer's why, their reason for buying. Those won't be exactly the same. So at MASSolutions, I actually started MASSolutions because when I was at UPMC and Duquesne, all these big companies, I would meet people from small and medium-sized businesses and wonder why their marketing wasn't up to snuff. But then I met a couple that their marketing was out of this world, knocking it out of the park. And they didn't have the budget that I had at UPMC. And I realized it was because most people don't understand marketing. Most people don't understand storytelling. If I asked 100 people to define marketing, I'd get 100 different definitions. So my why was I wanted to be able to provide real marketing to any company, regardless of industry or size. Now when I tell that story to my clients, they go, "That's nice, Dave." But my clients are really worried about marketing solutions, marketing results that they can track that come on time and on budget. So my why is that I want to provide real marketing, but my customers' why is they want marketing solutions on time and on budget. So we came up with the world's only no BS marketing firm, MASSolutions, bold solutions, no BS. Now I can convey that story. I can say MASSolutions, bold solutions, no BS. We want to have everyone be able to do real marketing. And the way we're going to do that is A, B, C, and D. And the result for you is going to be marketing solutions, marketing ROI. Okay? So you have to answer both why questions. Your why, or reason for being, your customer's why, their reason for buying. Coalesce that into your big idea. And whether it's for you personally or for your company, it gives you the opportunity to tell your story. Whether it's in the break room, whether it's in a text, an email, on a phone call, whether it's in a PowerPoint deck, and less is more there for sure too. We've all sat through the long PowerPoint decks. So that's how you tell your story there to make it about you. Now one quick thing about making it memorable. We buy based on emotion. And then we rationalize it with statistics and facts. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't use statistics. Now notice, I asked you to think in your mind's eye about your best boss. Then I told you that 58% of employees would rather trust a stranger than their boss. That's because I sold you on the emotional aspect. You thought about your best boss, and then I reinforced it with a statistic because we buy on emotion and we rationalize and reinforce through statistics and facts. We buy on emotion and then we rationalize it with statistics and facts. So when you decide to put a stat in a presentation, or when you decide to tell an employee a stat, you need to make sure that you put that in a context tied to the desired emotion that you're going to tug on. That's how you make it memorable. That's how you leverage statistics. So now, One last time for you to go back and look and see if you've incorporated all 4 into your 6 words. Got 30 seconds. Take that last look and see what you got. Okay, who can give me our example for this one? Whose 6 words are we going to get? Good.
Our audio, your voice.
Yeah. Our audio, your voice. It's making it memorable, makes an emotional impact. Your voice, our audio, you're getting it in there. Good. It's about anecdotes and analogies. It's about making it memorable, making an emotional impact, making it about them, and making it about you. It's because stories build trust, stories align the team, and stories differentiate you. Think back to that elementary school teacher, high school coach, college professor. Think back to that best boss. They used storytelling, they used anecdotes and analogies. You can too, to grow your businesses and to grow personally and professionally. Thanks.